Welcome to SPED 854, Module 3. In this module, we'll talk through the steps of the problem-solving process. The steps involving the problem-solving process will help you to navigate times when you need to work with others to solve a problem, particularly to benefit students with disabilities. The first step is to define the problem. It's very important to start off on the right foot by making sure you have the problem well understood and that you are working on the most appropriate problem. So this first step is critical, making sure you're actually solving the right problem and that you know exactly what the problem is. Step 2 is to gather specific information. Who's involved with the problem? Why might it be occurring? What are some of the causes or consequences? Step 3 is to explain the problem-solving process. Now that you know which problem you're going to tackle and some information about it, it's important that everybody involved knows the steps in the process so that everyone can work together in a cohesive way. Step 4 begins the part where you're trying to look for solutions to the problem. Now sometimes there's an immediate and very recognizable solution. Other times the solutions aren't very clear. In either case, it's really helpful to identify as many alternative solutions as possible. Some solutions might seem unfeasible, but it's possible when working together those kinds of barriers can be overcome and that potential solution could be the best one. Just by identifying alternative solutions, you have many options, which is always very helpful. Once you've created your list of alternative solutions, it's time to summarize the solutions. So what are the main features of each of these potential solutions? In step 6, you analyze the possible solutions. So here's where you're going to think about what are the pros and cons of potential solutions. What are their costs and benefits? Who would have to be involved? Do some seem to be more feasible or less feasible? Do some require more resources or less? Because in step 7, you rate each solution. So this is where you're going to start to think about which solution or solutions might be the best fit for the particular problem. And again, some solutions are going to seem much more feasible and appropriate than others once you've engaged in some kind of a rating system. Step 8, it's time to select the best solution. Again, this doesn't mean it's the perfect solution. In fact, oftentimes there's not a perfect solution. But here you're just trying to get the best solution for the particular problem and circumstances. In step 9, it's time to determine teacher satisfaction with the solution. So in other words, all the people that will be involved in this solution, you need to make sure that they are on board and satisfied with the solution. And this also includes yourself. In order to support students with disabilities, it takes the cohesion and cooperation among a lot of educational personnel. So it's important that everybody has support for the particular solution. In step 11, it's time to develop an action plan. So this would be the list of steps needed to implement the solution, including who's going to do each step along the way. In step 12, just like in our instruction, we want to be monitoring our efforts. So it's time to develop a monitoring system. This is where we check to make sure all the steps of the solution are being implemented, as well as collecting data to see if our solution is leading to intended outcomes. And the last step is to schedule next appointments. It's very easy to fall back into old habits or have the problem reoccur if we don't keep constant communication and check-in times with people involved in implementing the solution. So always make sure that you do have time on your schedules to revisit the problem and the solution. Now here are just a few pitfalls to problem solving. The first is actually very similar to the first suggestion in the problem-solving process. And this is not clarifying the problem to be solved. So again, if you don't know what the problem that you need to work on is, you're not going to be able to solve it very easily. Another issue is when you are engaged in those initial meetings, not discussing the one problem that's been identified. In other words, this is a pitfall in terms of staying on topic. It's very easy to fall into trying to solve many problems, but it's more productive to focus on one and see that problem through as opposed to getting off topic trying to vent or talk about many different problems. Another pitfall is not letting participants or those involved in implementing the solution be integrally involved in developing and choosing that solution. Again, this is just the idea that all people who are part of this problem and solution process need to be on board, their voices need to be heard, and we need to come to consensus about how to solve the problem. And the last pitfall is not planning for follow-up. Again, when you don't have time to regularly meet and discuss progress or potentially discuss things that need to be revised, the problem-solving process can come to a halt. The last idea related to problem solving has to do with, again, trying to determine which problems are worthy of your time and energy. And there's a way to think about this as a sphere of concern and a sphere of influence. Problems that occur in your sphere of concern are those that will waste your time and energy. These problems are often things that you have little to no control over, or perhaps you don't have the right resources to work with, or other people aren't interested in solving these problems. Again, this is spending too much time in this area is just going to make it so that you waste your own time. Alternatively, your sphere of influence is a place where you actually do have power and ability to make change. So these are problems that you have direct control over, that you do have the resources and personnel to tackle, and that by working on these problems, you will eventually be able to get to a solution and see it through. It's important to spend more time in your sphere of influence, because as you continue to be more effective, your sphere of influence grows. You start to gain more power and respect from others, which then means you're free to tackle more problems. So again, when you're thinking about the myriad of problems that might be facing you as you work to support students with disabilities, first try to center on those problems that are in your sphere of influence.